If they do even a small amount of what I'm going to recommend to them, then Britain will look a different country in 4 or 5 years from an
Okay.
energy point of view and from an inward investment point of view.
If you're happy with what they're doing, will you donate money to Labour?
Well, if I'm happy with what they're doing, they probably won't need me to or want me to.
The billionaire businessman John Caudwell liked the Conservatives enough to give them £500,000 for the 2019 general election campaign. But he's told the Times he's switched to Labour in despair. So we can speak to John Caudwell now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, mate.
Why are you in despair?
Oh dear. Do I
The
really
short,
need
yeah, no, the short version, John.
I really need to explain that? Um, I think there's so many mistakes been made during Richie's chancellorship and carrying on through his prime ministerial duties. But if you just look at one basic statistic, which is that although there's been a headwind against the UK economy and in many regards that the Tories couldn't avoid, the country is no better off now than it was in 2007. That's a long, long time to get no GDP growth. And we need new thinking and new policies to be employed. And when I've looked at the Labour manifesto, there's a huge crossover between their manifesto and my beliefs. So if they're able to implement one fraction of that, then I will be very pleased that I supported Labour and we'll be on the right pathway.
Well,
And meanwhile, what's to support in the Tory party? They really have been falling to bits now for 5 years, and of course, almost impossible for them to regain power either.
okay, this is still a leap of faith for you in a way, isn't it? Because obviously, 51 years supporting the Conservatives, you're jumping ship now, and I've just got a quote here from you. Their manifesto is grow GDP, create wealth, and use that wealth to help the poorer members of society. I mean, that's just written on paper, and you believe that. How specifically will they grow the economy, grow
Well, there's
GDP?
a lot of measures that they've already got in the manifesto that they're already looking to implement: deregulation, cutting public spending, improving the planning laws, making us self-sufficient in energy. There's a whole huge raft, way too much to go into detail here. But I don't know how successful they'll be implementing, because one thing saying you're going to do something, it's another thing doing it.
Mm.
Least if you say you're doing the things that are the right things, that is a supportable argument. And then what we have to do is make darn sure that we do it. And I'm hoping that I can have some degree of influence in the Labour Party to put them on certain correct pathways if I believe they're not on the correct commercial pathway. And I've got lots of ideas of how that might be to grow Britain's science and technology and environmental businesses within the UK by inward investment. And if they do even a small amount of what I'm going to recommend to them, then Britain will look a different country in 4 or 5 years from an
Okay.
energy point of view and from an inward investment point of view.
If you're happy with what they're doing, will you donate money to Labour?
Well, if I'm happy with what they're doing, they probably won't need me to or want me to. But
But if they want you to, will you?
well, it's a possibility. If I'm very happy with what they're doing and they're under threat in the next election, I would look. The best answer to this, I will support any party that will put the great back into Britain. And if the great is going back into Britain and somebody needs my support, then I'm here to give it.
You talked about you've got lots of plans to help Labour grow the economy. One of the statistics that we find really stark, I think it's 1 in 5 people are economically inactive, and some of that is down to sickness, long-term sickness. But 1 in 5 economically inactive. This can be for lots of different reasons, but that's a big problem. Some of that is to do with the pandemic. How would you how would you get that? How would you change that figure? How would you get more people to actually work?
Well, that isn't my area of expertise, of course, but I think we do need to tackle this issue of mental health, and I've looked at this a lot because of my involvement with Lyme disease, PANS pandas. These are physical illnesses that cause mental illnesses, and we do need to improve the health service dramatically, but that can only be done partly as a result of investing more money, but partly maybe at radically looking at the way we do things. Let me give you one example. I set up a charity called Caudwell Youth, and Caudwell Youth puts a one-on-one mentor every person that's between 11 and 24 that is deemed to be at risk of mental health problems, of criminality, of drug abuse, of addictions, of sexual exploitation, etc. And that is reducing the problems within those young people dramatically. We have an amazing success rate. And it costs me personally £5,000 per year per young person. But what an amazing investment that is when it stops that young person potentially going into jail, into prison, and costing the state £500,000 a
Okay.
year.
Yeah,
And we
no,
need to see more of
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, no, but and John, that's part of it. But just finally, the other part of the economically inactive, some of it is I think it's people over 50 who, after the pandemic, decided that they didn't want to go back to work for whatever reason. Do you think they're selfish?
No, no, I mean that's somebody's personal choice, but we need to look at the
Well, it has
motive.
an economic impact, doesn't it?
Somebody, yeah, let me finish. If somebody's going to not want to go back to work, and it's their choice not to go back to work, then it ought to be the state's choice not to give them any unemployment benefit and to be maybe harder on the rules regarding social service. Social service is there for those people that really cannot go to work, that have really got huge problems, like the people supporting Caudwell children,
Just
disabled parents of disabled children.
right.
Need to do more for the oppressed people of society, and we need to encourage those people who can go to work
Right.
to make sure they go to work, or to take away some of their benefits.
And John, very quickly, you don't support Labour on VAT on private schools.
No, I don't. No, no,
Right.
it's. I think it's look, whether it ends up being commercially positive in the long term for the Exchequer, I don't know. But I think there's an argument that it might be make the Exchequer worse off in the long term, not better off, and meanwhile put a huge extra pressure on state schools. I don't think it's something we need to do. I don't think it's desirable, and I think there's many more policies that are so much more important than putting VAT on private schools.
Okay, John, thank you. That is John Caudwell. He has supported the Conservatives for 51 years and now has switched to Labour.
And says he'll have some degree of influence in the policies they pursue when they get into government. He doesn't rule out giving them some money at some stage later down the line.